Sawadika, welcome to the program. This is Morning Focus, and today is March the 3rd. I'm Pachori Raksawong.
And I'm Pichai Chunsuk. Now, tension between Thailand and Cambodia intensified once again yesterday after Thailand voiced opposition to Phnom Penh's plan to lead a delegation of military attaches from various countries into the disputed 4.6-kilometer border area.
And the Metropolitan Police Bureau Deputy Chief yesterday criticized the DSI, the Department of Special Investigations, probe into the deaths during last year's anti-government protests.
Kumpatri will also be looking at the rising prices of consumer products. Manufacturers of other consumer products, particularly soybean oil, cooking oil, is also demanding a price hike. We'll be back with more details after this break. Welcome back to Morning Focus. Before we go to the main headlines, Kun Patri, we'd like to extend our condolences to the former Prime Minister, Kun Chuan Lee Pai, on the passing away of his mother, Kun Met Tuan. She was 99 and she passed away in her sleep yesterday, peacefully. Meanwhile, a lot of Thai papers are running stories about the upcoming censure debate, with Matichon saying the government whips have given the green light for the grilling of 10 ministers, which will last 66 hours. Now, 40 hours will be given to the opposition, Puea Thai, to grill the government, while the government will have 20 hours to present their side of the debate. Meanwhile, the debate will start on Wednesday, the 9th of March, and the actual vote will occur on a Sunday, that's the 13th of March. Meanwhile, Puea Thai MP Chatuporn Prompan claims that he will reveal, during the debate, the identity of the real culprits responsible for the torching and burning down of Central World Department Store. Meanwhile, the government says it's ready to answer any questions. Kumpachuri.
And related to the upcoming censure debate, being proactive here, because in Kom Chatluk it says team assigned to block Puea Thai clips. Now, House Speaker Chai Chit-chop said that the team will be responsible in making sure that any video clips used as evidence during the censure debate will be validated to make sure that they have not been tailored, not been doctored, to make sure no false evidence will be presented during the debating.
Right, we'll move on now to one of our top stories, the border tension. Border tensions have risen yesterday following Thailand's opposition to Phnom Penh's plan to lead a group of military attaches from various countries to the 4.6-square-kilometer disputed area. Now, a Thai military source at the border said that Thailand does not oppose if the military attaches visit the Pravihan temple itself. However, if attempts are made to bring the team to the disputed area currently seized by the Cambodian forces, Thai troops won't allow this because the area also belongs to Thailand.
The source said that Cambodia had planned to lead the 10 assistant military attaches to visit also the Gao Sikha Kiri Sawara Pagoda and the surrounding areas, which are situated in Thai soil, in Thai territory. And he said the border visit plan was aimed to be a tool to show to the international assistant military attaches that those areas actually belong to Cambodia. The source claimed that when Thailand led the 14 military attaches to the border in February, they did not set foot in the disputed area.
Right, Kunpatri, the military also said that after Thailand opposed the plan, there was reports that Cambodian troops would carry out what they described as unidentified operations in response to the Thai position. Now, Thai troops stationed at the border have been placed on high alert since this incident, and following this, the international attaches in Cambodia have asked to postpone their visit to the border area because they didn't want to trigger any problems. Now, the Thai military has also received a report that Cambodian Prime Minister is currently adjusting troops in the area, replacing the current batch of troops with a new batch, and this is seen, according to the sources at the border, as an intention to fight rather than to reconcile with Thai troops.
Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry said that Indonesia had already sent the proposed terms of reference for the process of sending its observers to monitor the Thai-Cambodian situation at the disputed border area. Thailand and Cambodia agreed at the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting earlier last month to allow a team of observers from Indonesia to assess the situation at the disputed border area after the recent clashes between Thai and Cambodian troops.
Right, we move on to our next story, and the controversy continues over the DSI's investigation report over the death of the Japanese cameraman from Reuters. Now, Metropolitan Police Bureau Deputy Chief Amnoy Nimano yesterday slammed the Department of Special Investigation for what he called a botched investigation into the deaths of last year's anti-government protests. Police Major General Amnoy yesterday said the DSI's assumption that the 13 of 91 people who killed could have been the work of soldiers during a clash on the 10th of April last year between red shirt supporters and government forces. He described this as groundless. He said it was wrong for the DSI to assume that the 13 might have been killed by soldiers because the CCTV security cameras installed in the Kokwa intersection area was trained and focused on lines of soldiers. Kumbatari.
And in addition to that, he also claimed the security cameras were not working during the clash. It was found that the cameras had been covered up just before the clash took place, so the direction of the cameras had no relevance as to who opened fire on whom. He also criticized the inconsistencies between the DSI's preliminary investigation conclusion into the death of Japanese cameraman Hiroyuki Muramoto and recently revised the findings. And he said, simply put, quote here, it's a botched job.
Right. Meanwhile, a core leader of the United Front for Democracy Against Dictatorship, Jatupan Prompan, yesterday filed a complaint with the Crime Suppression Division Police against the DSI Chief Tarit Pengdit and Police Lieutenant General Ampon Jarutjinda in connection with his remarks over the death of the Japanese cameraman. He asked the CSD, or the Crime Suppression Division Police, to charge Kuntarit with malfeasance and Police Lieutenant General Ampon for helping him commit the offense. Now, the complaint focused on the press conference where Kuntarit, citing Police Lieutenant General Ampon's findings that Mr. Muramoto was killed by a bullet probably fired from an AK-47 rifle, and that soldiers who clashed with red shirt protesters were not armed with such weapons. Kunjatupan said that this remark was at odds with the previous initial conclusion by the DSI that the Japanese cameraman was shot by arms from the military.
Defending his actions, the DSI chief yesterday said the initial findings into Muramoto's death were based on testimony from a police officer who was near him when he was shot. The officer was unsure from which direction the bullet was fired, but believed it was shot from the military line. Now, this led to the initial conclusion that soldiers might have been involved in his death. However, Police Lieutenant General Ampon later suggested that Muramoto's wound pattern suggested that the bullet might have come from an AK-47, an 05 NATO rifle, or even an SKS rifle, but not from a smaller caliber M16 rifle. The DSI had checked official distribution records of weapons issued to Army units involved in the operations during the April to May period of last year, and these types of weapons had never been distributed to the soldiers, and therefore the DSI had sent the additional results of the investigation to the police.
I'm sure we'll have more of that in the censure debate.
Yes.
We move on to our next story. Meanwhile, also, just before we do that, Matichon, meanwhile, commented and questioned the credibility of the DSI report, saying its new evidence against Mr. Muramoto probably amounts to a whitewash. And, Matichon has further comments to say that the statements ring hollow.
Exactly. They ring hollow because they do not have supporting evidence and they are not worth 9 months of waiting, adding that the so-called new evidence will not be enough to appease the Japanese ambassador to Thailand, and it will not make the Japanese public happy either. The disclosure of this new evidence was not meant to advance the Japanese cameraman's case, but it's only there for political interests.
Right. We move on to our next story, which affects everybody, a lot of people, a lot of debate. That's the rising prices of consumer products. Now, soybean manufacturers have asked the Ministry of Commerce to allow them to increase the price of 1 liter bottle of cooking oil by 19 baht. Now, the current price of soybean cooking oil is 46 baht per liter, and they want to raise the price to 65 baht. Now, the Commerce Ministry is now studying the impact of production costs on soybean cooking oil manufacturers. the ministry said that if production costs really have increased because of higher costs of raw materials, then the ministry will have to allow the price increase. However, before it does this, the price increase will be gradual to minimize the effect on consumers.
Of course, that's also going to drum up a lot of controversy. Merchants say 65 baht a bottle would be acceptable, but on the condition it must not disappear from the market, as in the case of palm cooking oil. But of course, buyers, they're going to disagree with it.
That's right.
That's a lot of extra money they have to put in. They said that 65 baht would be much too expensive. Meanwhile, manufacturers of fertilizer and milk products have also requested an increase in prices of their products as well, citing increasing production costs. So you can see that everything is just eventually going to go up and up and up.
That's
but it's not an increase by just 1 or 2, 3 baht, but it's 19 baht. That's
quite a lot. Meanwhile, we have a comment from Thai. Rath criticized the government's policy to freeze diesel prices, and with the subsidy describing it as a double standard and discriminatory. The columnist said that oil prices around the world are increasing, yet the government's policy to freeze diesel price oil at 3 prices at 30 baht per liter would force further distortion. He said this would make Thailand's diesel prices the cheapest in the world, despite the fact that we don't produce diesel. There are further comments that it's not going to work.
That's right. Despite Prime Minister Abhisit Wechashiwat's arguments that the price of diesel had to be frozen in order not to push up the costs of transport, which will affect the livelihood of the people, Malukdan said that in reality, the prices of many consumer products had already gone up despite the freeze on diesel price. The columnist said that he disagreed with the government's policy to continue subsidizing diesel just for the benefit of a group of people who use diesel at the expense of the people who use benzene and who have to bear higher costs because the subsidies used to prop up the price of diesel came from taxes collected from benzene usage. Now, this amounts to a double standard and discriminatory practice between two groups of consumers, and that's according to Malukdan. And with rising oil prices, he said the government has been subsidizing diesel at 4 baht per litre from the oil fund, or an addition of 100 million baht a day, or 3 billion baht a month.
The columnist also said that the government's plan was aimed at controlling diesel prices is to reduce keep production transport costs under control, when in fact a lot of wealthy people who own Mercedes-Benzes and BMWs are using diesel for their transport. Now we move on to, we only got a couple of minutes.
Yes.
There's a comment from
regarding the elections. Thai Rath editorial said Thailand is definitely now entering the election mode, citing last week when the Democrat Party officially kick-started its election campaign. Another evidence which suggested election is just around the corner was the announcement of the UDD leaders to contest in the next election, Kun Pichai.
Right. Meanwhile, the editorial urged all parties to support the democratic process and to reduce their support or involvement in what it described as street politics. I'd have to agree with that. The columnist also praised the opposition for launching the censure debate and the impeachment process, because that's within the parliamentary process, but was in disagreement and criticized those who troubled the Prime Minister and harassed the Prime Minister while he's going out to perform his duties.
Yes, right, and we'll be closely following the censure debate.
That's right. The censure debate starts next Wednesday.
It's going to be
It'll last for 66 hours, and the vote will occur on Sunday, the 13th.
Right.
We go to our cartoon.
Yes, it's coming from Thai Rath. This comic strip today features 2 events. The first event shows oil being pumped out from an oil rig in some foreign country, and people were happily screaming, "Oh, oil! Thank God that we do have oil."
Right. The second event turned to a supermarket in Thailand whose shelves were filled with palm oil, and people were happily screaming, "Thank you, God, we have oil."
Right. So it's 2 different sorts of oil, but oil.
Right. And with that, that's all we have for Morning Focus. Any comments, suggestions, please email us at morningfocus@postnews.co.th.
Right.
And with that,